on doing anything so far with the exception of the box and whisker plot?
That's what I was going to ask.
Does everybody know how to do everything else? Okay, let me ask you this question. Even though I didn't ask you to do this, if I gave you these 5 scores, say 78, 84, 89, 91, and 92, can you find for me the standard deviation? Now, I gave you a formula for it. I actually gave you 2 formulas, right? One was easier, but didn't make as much sense in terms of what it was doing, but it's certainly easier. Does any one person remember it?
It was like the square root and
all
then
the terms
Square root.
over them.
and then all the terms.
So you square each term.
You divide it by the number.
Hold on, you got to do more than that. Square each term, add them together. So the sum of the squares. Divide it by how many terms, which in this case would be 5, and then subtract, not on the top, but out to the side, the what? The average square. Now the average, to do that, I would have to what? Add them and divide by 5. So I would have to come in and say 78 plus 84 plus 89 plus 91 plus 92. Take that, divide it by 5. I get exactly 86.8. So I take that and go 86.8 quantities squared. That's standard deviation, okay? If I don't square root it, I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, that actually has a name. It's less important. I don't know that I'm going to get into it. And there's not a direct use of it that I know of, except to find standard deviation. But without the radical on it, we don't call it standard deviation. It's a much bigger number because I haven't square rooted it yet, or typically. And it's called variance. So there might be an application for variance I'm unaware of, but the main application for variance is to find the variance, take the square root of it, and that becomes the standard deviation. And in your own words, can you give me an idea about what standard deviation is measuring? And you can't really see it based on this definition, but it makes a little bit of sense based on the other definition.
Average distance from the average.
Okay, it's like the average that each score is, or its distance, or whatever, away from the mean. So on average, about how far is every score away from the mean? But it's not exactly that. It's kind of that. That actually has a different name, and I wasn't even aware it had a name until this year. One of my stat students says, "Oh no, that's called so and so." I'm like, "Oh, well, it is a natural valid statistic," but we don't use it because, as you'll start seeing today, this standard deviation is directly related to our normal distribution curve. It has direct implications. Whereas that what you described to me a second ago about how far each score is away from the mean on average, that doesn't have a direct relation to the standard normal distribution curve. This does. And because the values are so close, this is a very widely used statistic. Are y'all with me on this? Okay, and by the way, if you get a rounded value there, as you will see on your calculator, don't put the round, that's not rounded. All right, that's 0.8, 0.00000. I put the exact value. Don't put the rounded value there and square it. Don't do it. Because if you do, then your answer is going to be off. It might not be off to the tenths, but it's going to be off a little bit. And if we want it to be exact, we need to be exact. So you have the ability to put that in your calculator and store the value. And we'll talk about the calculator a lot today. So if we don't get far enough, as far as I want to, no problem. All right, we'll catch up. If we need to take an extra day, we'll take that. All right, so right here, that's standard deviation. Let's just kind of jump into what we're doing today. So as quickly as we can possibly go through this, and I'm not going to make you do everything. I'm going to give you some of these so that we can move fast. And everybody needs an Nspire. So if you don't have one, either borrow one or get yours out. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
All right, get yours out. Get this. I'm on page, what page am I on? 125-ish. And we're going to kind of walk through these. Some of these I'm going to give to you so that we don't have to waste as much time, but some of them we can find. So right here, first thing, mean. Everybody knows how to find the mean or the average, right? Add them together and divide by the total number of terms. And I don't know how many that is exactly, 18, I think. All right, so if you did that, you would get this for the mean. And I'm going to talk about box and whisker plot here. And then you can go back if you want and redo those box and whisker plots for practice if you want to. You might have looked at the key and saw what I did. It's not rocket science for it, but I'll talk about it for sure. So the mean ends up being 77.1 repeating. So if I told you to round, that's fine, but putting a bar over it, if I need to use that mean for standard deviation, I would want to do it. All right. And then I'm going to show you how to do all this with your calculator. All right. The mode, when you look up there, you can clearly see that there are 3 83s. So that's the mode. The median. Now there are 18 scores. I know that because I counted them up. I would say, okay, if there's 18, there's an even number. So there's 2 in the middle. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then from this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are the 2 in the middle. So I average them to get my median, and that gives me 76.5. Right? And when there are 2 in the middle, what do I do when it goes to finding the quartiles? I include the first one with the first half, the second one with the second half. If there was 1 in the middle, I don't include it with either half, right? So now I can find the quartiles. Well, how many terms are here again? 9 on each part. So I'm going to go to the 5th. That is my first quartile. And then I'm going to go counting from the right or the whatever, the 5th there. That 91 is my 3rd quartile. The max is very clearly the 108. The min is very clearly the 28. The interquartile range is what? The difference between the quartiles, right? So the 91 minus the 69 is 22. The range is the high minus the low, which is 80. Big range. And the outliers, looking at it, it looks like 108 might be an outlier because it's 15 higher than that. This 28 really looks like an outlier, but I can't just eyeball them and know that, right? It all has to do with that little formula. So how do I figure out if something is an outlier? And I should have left you more space there. I did not. Sorry. I think I've changed this so next year they have more space. But what do I do to check outliers? You remember? I take the interquartile range and multiply it by 1.5. So if I take the IQR and I multiply it by 1.5, I get what? 33. So I take that 33 and I add it to the 3rd quartile. So I go 91 plus 33 is 124. Are there any scores greater than that? No. So that 108 did not end up being an outlier. He certainly was a lot better than the rest of the group, but not an outlier. And then I take that 33 and subtract it from the 1st quartile. So 69 minus that 33 gives me 36. Are there any scores lower than that? Definitely that 28. So my only outlier is a 28 is that. But don't just eyeball it. Listen, when you were younger, like much younger, 5th grade, they might have talked about stats and what an outlier was. I remember one of my daughters came home and said, look, Dad, there's the outlier. And I don't know why I even bothered to check. I looked at it and I went, I don't think that is an outlier. It is, look. And it literally in the notes it said that. But they just because it was far away. But I mean, look at if the score right there was a 37, a 37 is not lower than a 36, right? But it's still way lower than that. So you can't look at that number and just go, oh, it's 28 points lower. Of course it is. It has to meet this condition. And who came up with the rules of this? I don't know. So I don't have any now. I haven't researched that at all. But somebody did. So we're going with 28. And then I did mention variance. So what would variance be? I'm not going to make you calculate that manually. I know I said that. I actually changed that too for next year. But I don't need you to calculate variance manually. But remember what variance is?
It's just the standard deviation.
Right? We just said it a few minutes ago. It's all the standard deviation without the radical. So basically you calculate the variance using your formula, which would be terrible here because there's 18 terms, right? You would do that, and then you just square root that variance. When you do that, it becomes standard deviation. But I'm not going to, if I make you do that manually on a test, I have a way to do that. I will make you show your setup and show your work, but I'll give you like 4 or 5 scores. I will never give you one with like this many scores where it's really hard. All right. So I'll give you like just a few scores and I'll say, what's the mean? What's the variance? What's the standard deviation? So I'm just telling you right now, that's what I would do. So you would calculate the mean with those 5 scores, kind of like I did earlier, right? And then you would plug it in your formula underneath the radical to get the variance. Without the radical, that would be variance. And then you square root that, and that becomes standard deviation. And the standard deviation, as you'll see very soon, means something. Now, how do I do a box and whisker plot? I didn't give you much room here, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to enlarge that a little bit to give us some space. I know you don't have the luxury of that. But this is how you go about a box and whisker plot. The first thing you need is a number line. Now, a lot of people accidentally put their box and whisker plot on the number line. Don't do that. Put it below or put it above. Your calculator actually does box and whisker plots. All right, we'll do that today if we have time. I'll show you how to use what we've typed in there, and boom, it can actually create one for you. And it can create one and show outliers as well, like I'll show you here. But it's probably easier just to do it yourself. So the first thing you need to do is figure out how long to do your number line. Well, your number line only needs to be big enough to include all your points. So since I went as low as 28, I'm going to start at 20. And as high as 108, I'm going to go to 110. So I'm going to draw a number line. I'm going to draw a number line across this thing. And again, sorry I didn't give you enough room. But I'm going to draw a big number line. And I'm just going to start at 20. And make sure your increments are right. Like if that's an increment of 30, try to do the same increment. Don't go like 40, 50, 60. I mean, don't do that. Try to be as accurate and as clean as you can there. So with the same distance, 60, 70, 80. I'm going to be a little short, I think 90, 100, 110. Let's go out to 120. So I label it out to where I can get all this stuff in. Now, here's what goes in. Traditionally, you want 5 things. This is it. The high, the low, the quartiles, the median. Not the mean, not the mode, not the standard deviation, anything. And by putting the high, the low, the quartiles, and the median in there, what do those 5 things break this graph up into? Quarters. They break it up into quarters. Now, what you're going to see is sometimes the quarters are longer than others, but it stands for a quarter of the scores. So even if one section's long and the other one's skinny, long doesn't mean it has more scores in it. Each little part has the same number of scores as accurately as possible. What it means is it's spread out more, or maybe those scores are compacted together in a closer interval. But don't look at that. I ask that question sometimes. I'll go, hey, because the box and whisker plot is really stretched out here, does it have more scores or less scores than the other ones? And people go, sometimes they say more, but it has the same as the others, right? Because everything represents a quarter. That's what quartiles and medians do, right? They break it into quarters, right? So anyway, here's what I'm going to do. The low score was a 28. So again, I'm not putting it on the number line. I come down below the number line, and I'm going to mark these things. So a 28 is about right there. And I said label it. So there's the min. 28 is my minimum score. And just as close as you can get. My maximum score was a 108. So, I didn't need to go to 120. I was great right there, wasn't it? So my maximum score is a 108. So I'm going to eyeball about 108, and I'm going to try to put it on the same horizontal plane, and that's the max right there. Try to get it level with this as much as possible. All right. Now, you'll see in a second why I do this if you don't know what a box and whisker plot is, but I'm not putting 5 dots, but if you need to start that way, great. I need the quartiles. First quartile was 69. That was right here. So if you want to put a dot, you can, but in the end, we're going to have a little vertical line there. You'll see why in a second. And that is my first quartile. My median is my 76.5. So that's 75, maybe 76.5. You can put a dot if you want, but eventually I'm going to put a vertical line there. That is my median. And you can write the number there like I did in maximum if you want. You don't have to. And then my third quartile is my 91. So I'm going to come in here and put a dot there, which is eventually going to turn into a vertical line. Now here's all you have to do to make your standard box and whisker plot. But then I'm going to come back later and do outliers. So a standard box and whisker plot, like a normal one, would have a little bar over the top. So I'd have where these 3 things were, I just extend them into little vertical line segments and then connect the top and the bottom. So it makes this little double box, which they call the box. And then out from the box, I draw from the middle of that vertical line, I just draw a line out to that and a line out to this. Now, this is not what I want you to do, but this is what we used to do back in the day. Now, again, what does each part of the box and whisker plot represent? A quarter of the scores. Now, I realize there's 18 scores. How do you get a quarter of 18? It's like, what, 4.5? So I realize that that's not a perfect scenario, but it's as good as I could possibly do. This is about 4 scores. Now, you're like, oh, why aren't there more there? This just means they're more spread out. Remember that outlier? This means there's a quarter score there. It's not less scores. They were just closer together, that little interval right there. And then this is a quarter of the scores. That's a quarter of the scores. Now, the reason why people didn't like it looking like this, and your calculator can do both, they don't like that because it gives kind of the illusion that the scores, if you just looked at this quickly, the inference you should gain from this is, gosh, man, the lower end was crammed all between like a 69 and a 75, that 25% there. And the next 25% was spread out from 75 to 90. And the last 25%, you're the ones who made your A's or bonus points or whatever, however this was scored. But you would look at it, man, 25% of the class got strung out between 30 and 68. But that really wasn't the case, was it? So what we do with an outlier is we don't extend out to the outlier when the min is an outlier or when you have one or more outliers, okay? We just show the outliers as individual points. And then we just extend the whisker to the next highest point. Well, what was your next highest point? 65. So I'm going to go to 65 and mark that. That is my second largest one. And now I think this gives me a better idea about what happened here. It looked like one guy got hammered, right? And then you had about 25% of your scores make high D's, 25 made low C's, 25 made high C's in B's, and then 25 made A's. But it gives you kind of a snapshot of the group. And why don't they just do 4 boxes? I don't know, maybe because it gives the illusion of a standard normal curve, right? There's more going on in the middle and then less at the sides, but that's really not the case. But I don't know, maybe. But anyway, that's called a box and whisker plot. I don't know if it still does. Has anybody taken the ACT in here? Have y'all gotten your results back? Did they send you is it all email now or is it? Did they they used to send out a paper copy of it, and I don't know if it's the same with the email. But you got a paper copy? Well, when they used to send it out, and it may be on both, did you look through it or just see your score and go yay or nay, whatever?
I just said yay.
Just yay? Thought it was a yay? You mind sharing?
I got a 28.
28, it's a good start. They had to give you hope with 28s. Hey, my son made a 28 on his first try. Actually, that's not true. Made a 20 on his first try, 20 on his second try, 30, 31, 31, 31. And I'm like, dude, take it one more time, 34. So don't quit on it, right? And the big difference, like if you're going to a public school, the difference between a 32 and a 33 might be $3 or $4 grand a year. Difference between a 29 and a 30 might be $6 grand a year.
How many
So
times are you allowed to take?
many times as they offer. And he wasn't going to take it that last time. And if you really want to get better at like a topic that's not math, Mr. Cooley, Miss Cooley teaches senior AP. Her husband, I've made him so much money. Anyway, he met with my son 3 times, $60 an hour, just met hour, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Came back to that Thursday and goes, that guy's a genius. He knows this test. And sure enough, he jumped from a 31 to a 34, and it was all his reading and science scores just jumped. So that might be something you look into if you need a little extra boost for whatever. I really should get a commission, some kickbacks. I've sent so many people to him. Anyway, that's a box and whisker plot. If there were 2 outliers, guys, then just do it. Like if that 108 was an outlier, then just extend it out to the next highest one and just mark it as an outlier and the next highest score. But that's it. But remember, it's quartiles. Does a median have anything to do? I mean, a mean have anything to do with a quartile? No. Now, in a perfect world, means and medians align, as do modes, really close together in a perfect curve. But we rarely are dealing with perfect curves. So remember, Q1, median, Q3, high, low, unless the low's an outlier, or maybe unless there's 2 outliers, then go to the next one that's not an outlier and make that the whisker out to it. Tracking? Okay, so here's how to use your calculator. So pull your calculator out, and I want to briefly talk about this calculator for those of you that have no idea how to even turn this sucker on. So give me a second to pull this up. And I want you to right now just go ahead and turn it on and hit the on button where it says home so that you see the home screen. And the home screen should have 6 multicolored boxes along the bottom. No, 7, well, 6 multicolored and then a plus, minus, whatever. And then at the top, it should say Scratchpad on the left and Documents on the right. Is everybody there? Okay, now I'm going to tell you, I don't deal from this home screen much. And the word, oh, awesome. Perfect, thank you. So I don't live in the Documents section. That's not where I spend my time. Rarely do I, unless I'm doing a calculator lesson that I want to store. So you can store information, graphs, calculations, and stuff. You can store pretty much anything you want. And I'll make a little side note on that. I know when I say store, a lot of you are like, store, you say? You can put a lot of formulas in there. You can put a lot of text in there. You can. And I don't care. Like most of my tests are non-calculator based. And if I give you a calculator and you're smart enough to put it in there, guess what? That mirrors real life, right? You're going to have, when you go to a job, you're going to have a laptop. When you go, you're going to have resources at your disposal. So I don't have a problem with that. I'll just give you a non-calculator test if I don't want you to have those assets. But that's not the case with some teachers. Like I know Reeves will be fumed if she finds out, and you'll go down if she finds out that you have stored stuff in your calculator for tests. Okay, so I would be very careful. I have at times done calculator checks. Now I just change my tests so that I don't have to worry about it. But be careful from teacher to teacher. That might be impactful. All right, but you can store a lot of stuff. So what I normally do is live in the Scratchpad. I come over to the Scratchpad, and if I want to graph something, I hit B. I'm on the graph. And if I don't want to scratch something and I just want to like make a calculation like 2 + 4, whatever, I do that in the calculator. Now to show you how to do that, and once you'll see, once you do that, you probably are just going to stay there, like right here. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so right here, once I'm in the Scratchpad, and you're going to really like these once you get in there. Once I hit enter on, say, calculate, this is my screen where I do calculations. You can see I was just adding together those 5 terms and dividing by 5 to get my average, and it stays there forever. I can find out what I did 10 weeks ago. If I just want to keep scrolling up, I can keep finding stuff and come back and come back. So I can do this kind of stuff all day long if I want. Great thing too, let's just say I'm trying to do my standard deviation formula, right? I can do the big square root, and I can make a fraction button and type everything in there. And then I can go minus. I can come up, highlight that, hit enter, and it brings my thing back down. You also have that second, it's not second, it's actually control. You can also hit control answer. Control answers brings the very last value you did. That's on most calculators. But the great thing about this is, like if I wanted to go, all right, I want to add 50 to not that or that, but to that, I can enter and it brings it down exactly. And then I can get my value. So it's a really nice calculator in this regard. And if I ever want to graph something, I can click up here to graph, or even better, I can hit that little calculator button, and that calculator button right over tab is a toggle. It toggles from one thing to the next. Okay, just back and forth. Now that's where I live because that's what I normally need. For this lesson, I'm going to need a spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is go back to the home page, hit the home button, the house, and I'm going to go to new document. So I'm going to hit, I don't have to do it, but I'm just going to go to new document, hit 1. And it's going to ask me what kind of a document. So what I want to do is enter all these stats in a giant spreadsheet, and then I'm going to let the spreadsheet program help me make my calculations. So what I'm going to do is I want to enter this into a spreadsheet. I know when you see data and stats, it makes you think that, oh, that's what I want, but you can use that to formulate different things, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm going to go to a spreadsheet, which is 4. And when I hit 4, you can see that I have like a big spreadsheet. Now you also notice these tabs at the top. If I add to the spreadsheet another file or another folder, whatever, you'll see 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. But again, guys, don't live here. When I'm done with this, hit X. If you want to save it, you can. Don't save on those yellow calculators because I don't want to clog them up, their memory, because we use them for so many different things. But you just X out of here. If it says, would you like to save? Say no, and then just go back to your scratch pad when you want to do calculations. I see people every now and then working in their doc, and they've got like 47 tabs open, and I'm like, oh my God. You don't want to do that. It slows the process down, slows the thinking power of the calculator down. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to now, and you can follow along with me in the notes. The notes are pretty good if you want to do this, but I'm going to go back and enter all this junk in there to do it with my calculator to show you how you can do it. So I'm on the next page if you flip it over. So I'm skipping over something right now. We'll come back to that. So right here, I'm on the next page. I went to my home screen. I grabbed list and spreadsheet, and now I'm here. So what I'm going to do is label this information at the top. I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to go up there. I called it heights. You can call it X. You can call it scores. I think I'm just going to call it scores this time. So just type in SCORES and then come back down to the first spot. Oh, and by the way, if you get this much behind me and you're like, well, just say something. Don't wait 5 minutes and go, I'm lost. All right. Tell me you're lost immediately so we can address it, and then we don't have to go back 10 steps. And then you can't catch up. Are you with me? So don't feel bad about it. It's a new calculator for many of you. All right. So now just start entering your scores. Now keep in mind on your test, if you enter one score wrong, a ton of your stats are going to be off. You might still get the Q1 and the Q3 and the median because they're just in locations, but you're going to miss average. You're going to miss standard deviation. You're going to miss variance. If you do happen to miss a number that's right near the quartile, you might miss the quartile. Are you following me? Because it averages those two numbers. So be really careful. Double check what you enter in. So we're going to go right now and we're going to enter in. Why don't we enter in the numbers that are below this since we already did the other one? All right. So do you see the one starting with 27? Or are those the same ones? No, they're different. So start with that 27, 66, 66. And then 67 and enter those in. So, but when I say enter, man, hit 27 and just go down arrow. Okay. And then 66 down arrow. And when you're done, tell me this. So 66, I'm not going to say it out loud. You just go ahead and do it.
Mine doesn't have like the 0.00 after it. Is that normal?
That's just the way I have mine set up. Okay. Thank you for speaking up immediately. So are you on that first spot? I'm entering the scores at the bottom of your page. Okay, so I'm entering those in. So start with 27 and just hit the down arrow. If you hit tab, it moves you somewhere else. So I'm just going to go down arrow and I'm going to enter all these. You can see that these are not in order, are they? I'll show you how to deal with that too, which is really great. If you're like me, you hate putting them in order. So if I had to do something manually but I had my calculator, I could kind of cheat a little bit. See, this would be a pain without my calculator because I'd have to put them in order first. My calculator can do that for me. And for those of you who think, oh, I won't enter them incorrectly, when I was making out a key for your work yesterday or the day before, I swore I entered them in. I went, you know what? Let me double check before I print this and put it up there on School Sheet. Sure enough, I entered a 99 as an 89. So, and that threw a lot of my stats off. So go back. I'm going to go back and look through all these. The nice thing too, when you type them in, you're like, oh, there's 21 scores. But I'm going to look there. I got 100, a 92, a 67, 69 and a half, a 70, a 74, 73 and a half, couple 72s, a 71, 70.5, 68, 70, a 66.5, a 63, 62, 69, 67, a couple of 66s, and a 27. Okay, now that I've got them in there, all right, everything's in there. It says hit the following. So you're going to find with an Nspire, if you haven't found this out already, if you own one, you probably know this thing. Most of the time when I want to do something with a graph or do something with stuff, I go to my menu because my menu is where most of everything is stored. That's not always the case, but it is a lot. And the menu is right there, a couple of things below the on key. So look what happens when you hit menu. It usually just directs you right to where you want to be. Menu. What do I want to do? Do I want to insert something? Do I want to do stats? Do I want to do a table? I'm guessing maybe it's stats. So if I went to statistics, which is 4, you can go down and highlight it or just enter the number 4. Okay, so what do I want to do? Do I want to do a stat test, a confidence interval distribution, or would I like to make some statistics calculations? It kind of almost feels like, oh yeah, I'm going to calculate some statistics. So I'm going to hit 1 or hit enter, either one. Now it says, well, what would you like to do? Now we're not even doing regressions. So all this regression stuff you can ignore. The only option is 1 or 2 variable stats. Well, 2 variable stats compares one thing to another, like height to shoe size. We're just one variable, like one thing, right? I have one column, scores. So I want to do 1 variable stats. So I hit 1. Now, instead of spitting them all out, it says number of lists. 1, okay. Now it says, where would you like me to put this? Okay. It wants me to choose where does it want me to choose the stuff from? Because remember, I could have had a spreadsheet with lots of lists. I've only put one thing in there. So do you want to pull the stuff from row B? No, I want to pull the stuff from what was row A, but I named it scores. So click on it. Click on this, like you can just click and it'll bring you the drop-down menu. Sorry, hit that and it'll give you the drop-down menu. Oh yeah, there's scores. I want scores, not B. And then where do you want to put your results? Now it says put them in C. I don't know why it did that. I would rather put them right next door in column B. So I'm going to change that to a B, but you don't have to. If you don't, you're going to have this space in B and then the results. So I'm going to change that to B. So I put my answer in B. So I'm going to just one more time, I'll show you again, but you can see once I hit enter, it says, okay, here's the title of what we just did, 1 variable stats. And then here's your X bar, which is your mean. Now, what do you think sigma X is? The sum of the scores. So if anybody ever wanted to know the sum of the scores, you have it. There's the sum of the squareds. Now, the sum of the scores shows up in the mean, doesn't it? So if you ever had to show your work, you could be like, oh, yeah, I didn't really add that together, but I could say that the sum was this because you gave it to. Yes, ma'am.
Mine, it didn't work.
It's up there. Yep. And then the sigma X squared, didn't you add the X squareds up in the process of finding standard deviation? So if you were ever doing it manually and needed to show your work and you're like, crap, I really don't want to enter all 20 of these squared things and add them together. Guess what? It told you what that was. If you happen to want to know and kind of maybe show your work, whatever. This SX means nothing to us. When you take AP stats, it will. We don't get into that. Going down, what does sigma X mean? Not SX, but sigma X. So there's your standard deviation, all nice and calculated for you. Done. Right? Next one down, N. That's your how many scores. You didn't even have to count. Okay? Minimum X, 27. So you didn't have them in order, did you? You didn't have them in order, but now you know the minimum is 27. So if they were completely scrambled, you could still take your high and get your low and find the range that way without having trouble. Go down Q1, median, Q3, and your max. So it's got all this stuff ready and willing to help you. You do have to use your Q1 and Q3. So I'd have to use those two values to find my IQR, and I'd have to use the max and the min to find my range. But those are a couple of the things you have to find, but it finds everything else for you that you need, except for variance. Variance is what? You square root variance to get standard deviation. So what do you do to standard deviation to get the variance? Square it. How would I do that then? You know, how do you copy in Google Word or whatever, Google Docs? Control C, same thing. So I can go up here to standard deviation right there and go Control C. And then I can, watch this, I can get out of this thing by hitting calculate page. So I can jump to my calculate and go, all right, I'm going to get Control V, paste it there, and square it. Oh, 163.8 is my variance. And then all I have to do to go back is close this out, and I'm back where I was. So you can jump from this with that to your calculate page, make a quick calculation, close it out, and it'll put you right back where you were. Yes?
So I picked Control C just to see now. Like I was like,
Control C. Try it again. You gotta be on the cell you want.
well, now it's
You don't
like
hold it
it's-
down.
You what?
Okay, no. It just deleted.
Oh, you're just hitting Control then C?
You literally-
I thought you had to hold it.
No, you don't have to hold it.
You don't have to hold it? Okay. Okay, so like right here, Control C, you can see if I just move over there and Control V it, I'm going to be pasting it in that spot. All right. Now, anyway, what if you wanted to arrange these right here, this column in order? Right now, they're not in order, right? It looked in order, but then you went down to 62 from 69. I can go up to scores. All right, so if I go up and highlight scores and hit menu, all right, and then actions, what do you see? Sort. So again, I'm going up to the top where it says I want to arrange these scores in ascending order. So I go up to scores and highlight it, hit menu, actions, sort. How would you like to sort it? And what column would you like to sort? Well, I want to sort column A, and I want to make it ascending. So I'm going to tab down, hit OK.
Wait, how do you get to sort? It's like.
I got to go up. See my cursor? I'm going up and highlighting scores.
Okay.
If I'm right here on 27, I'm sorting 27. That's just a single cell. There's nothing to sort. I want to sort the column. So I got to go say it's called
It
scores.
doesn't even let you.
Sorry?
It won't even let you sort.
Yeah, well, sometimes it doesn't even give you that option. But if you do that up at scores, it'll sort. Now, I got to be honest with you, I'm not going to give you any more lists on your homework that you have to sort. But I'm just showing you that feature because, like, if I was trying to do a study with all of your scores, I could type them in because they're all in my grade book, but they're not in order, right? The people with A's don't make the lowest score. The people that have lower W's and Z's in their name don't make the highest. So they're all over the place. So I'm not going to sit there and eyeball it and go from low to high. I'm just going to enter them in, sort them, boom, I've got them in order. Yeah.
I like don't accidentally. And so how do I get back to
Go to
this?
current documents.
You did what?
And click like home.
Like if you on the menu, click.
Oh, yeah. Go to home. Like if you accidentally click out of this, if you go to home, you can go to current things right there and it'll pop up what's opening. Yep.
What do you press to sort?
Okay, one more time. I'm sorting the scores. So highlight that. You got to be up there. And then again, if you're if in doubt, go to the menu because that's usually where things are happening. If you hit menu and then you hit actions on the menu, it'll allow you to do all kinds of different things. And one of them is sort. Y'all seeing that? And sometimes older calculators like the yellow ones, the stuff will be in different locations or different letters or whatever, but it's generally they're in the same stuff. The newer ones have some advancements on them. I don't really use those advancements, but there are some better aspects of the newer ones that you have with the white faces on them and the blue backgrounds. Are y'all with me, guys? So you have all of these stats. Now, one thing it does not do for you is mode. Okay, it doesn't spit out the mode, but that's why sorting them is really nice too, because then you can go back through. Yeah, you can sort back through it, look back through everything and see what the mode is. And this had 3 modes. So I guess you would call it trimodal, but you could write the 3 ones that showed up twice, but that just means that they probably don't mean much, the mode in that case, yes.
Is the variance on the list that it gives you?
It does not. So that's what we talked about. You would have to go and copy the standard deviation and then square it. Because remember, standard deviation is a square rooted variance. So you'd square the variance to make it bigger and make it you'd square the standard deviation to make it the variance.
Oh.
All right. So, and notice it also didn't tell you outliers, right? You'd have to figure that out. But if you do the box and whisker plot, it will reveal them for you. So flip the page and let me show you how to do a box and whisker plot. And I honestly forget this all the time because it's easy to do them on your own, but I'll show you. So right here, I'm looking at this next page, guys. All right. So it says, all right, when you've got all the scores in there, all right, you've got everything listed. I have a different set here, 23, 68, 75, but whatever. It says once they're entered, blah, blah, blah. Okay, go back to the home screen. So I've got everything entered, right? I'm going to go back to the home screen. I don't have to do this. I could either go back to the home screen or even better, do you see right below the home screen where it says add page? So you might put this in there, write this in there. If I go control add page, control doc, I can add data and stats. I literally am going to add another page to my document. So I'm going to go down to data. Did y'all hear that? I'm going to add the page. I'm going to add that data and stats. So hit enter on that. And you can see, oh, it's got a screen with all my scores on it. Now, it's so random. The scores are just all over the place. They don't mean anything right now because I haven't aligned anything and talked about whether it's X and Y or anything like that. Okay? So those are my scores. They're on the screen. And you can see that kind of in that picture right here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move my cursor to where it says click to add a variable, right? You got this little cursor. Move down to click to add a variable, right? And hold on. And then I'm going to click on it and it says scores and I'm going to choose scores. Did that happen?
Yes.
Okay. So I clicked on that. It said scores and I went yes. And it goes and it highlights it. So right there, you can see, man, there were a ton grouped together and it kind of looks like there's 3 outliers, doesn't it? But I don't know for certain, right? But I did get them all separated at least. And then I'm going to do this. It says move your cursor up so it's not on that score label anymore. So I'm just going to move it up right here. And I'm going to hit the following button combination. You're not going to have to do this on your test, so don't worry about it, right? But if you ever want to refer, hit Control, Menu, and Box Plot. Bam. There's your box and whisker plot. And the great thing about this is if on your test, for instance, you're like, crap, I forgot, was that middle number the median or was it the mean? I forgot, man, people forget every year. Well, look, if I tab from one thing to the next or even click on it, oh, there's the 27. Look right here. If I go there, there's the 62. If I move over, up, Q1, median, Q3, next highest score, outlier, outlier. And the outliers are always shown as dots. And you can change that. I think if you go to menu, no, what is it? Was it control menu again? Control menu while I'm on this. I can do I can extend the box and whisker plots, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. But yeah, if you do control menu again, you can extend them all the way out. That's kind of like an old school box and whisker. And let's be honest, guys, the more I get, the bigger the population grows, the less you're going to have outliers. There are no outliers on the AP test. There are no outliers on the ACT. You go, oh yeah, there was that one guy who made a 0. No, there was 100 guys who made a 0. They came in bad shape from partying the night before, fell asleep on their test, drooled all over it, and turned it in. That happens all the time. If you ever take the ACT and you look up, you'll see somebody sound asleep. During the ACT, you're like, you're out of your mind. You just spent $90 to take this thing or whatever it costs, and then you fell asleep. but somebody's dad probably made them go in there, and they don't want to go to college, and they want to, be a plumber or a car repair and make way more money than I ever made. But anyway, they have different things, and they're taking. It happens all the time. So there are no. The more the population grows and the more accurate the test is, the less you have those irregularities. Just the less you have. Okay, here's what I want to do. We're kind of out of time. We didn't get to talk about a lot, so we're going to be a day behind, I'm thinking. But I want you to do this. Finish up whatever you can do on this, but we have not talked about the standard normal distribution curve. We'll get into that tomorrow. Not tomorrow. We'll get into that on Monday. And by the way, if you have one of my calculators, do this. If you have one of mine, go up here, X that out of that, and go, do you want to save? Hit no, so that the people coming in will have a fresh start. Just X out at the top and don't save. All right?
And the fact that it has animations too, like when it's smooth and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's for 130 something bucks. You're getting a pretty great little value.
No, you are. Like, I thought it was kind of a waste of money for a calculator.
No, I only know I'm only scratching the surface of what it does.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it does all kinds of finance applications, and
Hit the go button.
you can actually code with the old 84s too. Ugly and tedious, but
I hit the book button, and there's actually a function that just does standard deviation.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you take stats, she knows about some of the secrets. I'm focused on the math of it. She's focused on the use of the stats. So she'll show you, oh, you don't have to do all that, just do this.
There's
And that's fine when you get the stats. I just want you to see the math of it.
There's some way you can calculate the individual, like one thing at a time. Like you can just calculate. I mean, on the main calculation page, I was trying to figure it out yesterday, but I couldn't figure out how you were supposed to list the data.
Gotcha.
Because there's a function on the book where it's just mean, and
Sometimes it's just parentheses with score, comma, scores, comma, score, and it
Yeah.
probably does that.
yeah, I guess.
Try that if you ever want to try it, but you can always do the list way.
Yeah, I mean, but list is easy too because I now have a document saved and I can just go in there, put in all the things, and just go to the
Sure.
next one, the box, and this one's there. It's all that.
Yep.
It makes it easier.
I mean, it has to be a certain.
Ugh.
Mr. Hurry,
So, man.
record the lesson.
Sorry?
Record the lesson.
I just did, actually. Thank you, because that tells me to stop the recording.
And I gotta leave at like 2:40 today. For a track meet.
Well, the full lesson